when Denzel Washington stood up, removed his microphone, and said, "I'm done with this show." It was more than a celebrity tantrum or a heated TV moment. It was a manifesto, a declaration that some boundaries cannot be negotiated. It was a public refusal to endure disrespect, to cede moral authority to hosts or journalists whose questions cross from inquiry into intrusion. This isn't about who won an argument or who humiliated whom. It's about dignity. And more importantly, it signals that power, true power, resides not in speaking louder, but in choosing when to remain silent, when to walk away, when your presence is used against you. Let's break down why this moment matters, not just for the people involved, but for audiences, media, and the idea of civilized dialogue. The anatomy of the breakdown, from conversation to confrontation. To understand the magnitude of Denzel's move, we must trace how conversations devolve. Public interviews often begin with goodwill. The guest is invited, introductions are cordial, questions are framed as curiosity. But too often, hosts shift from questions to demands, from probing to pressuring, from respectful tracking to framing the guest in a trap. In this exchange, the host pushed on dimension after dimension: faith, values, ideology, accountability. At first, Denzel tried to navigate. He attempted to redirect. He affirmed his commitment to truth and to lifting people up. But when one's core identity, faith, moral integrity, personal boundaries is repeatedly challenged, deflections run out. At that point, the conversation no longer functions as mutual exploration. It becomes a trial. The host becomes prosecutor. The guest becomes defendant in a court of media expectations. That is when respect has already been lost. The only remaining recourse is refusal. Thus, walking off ceases to be an act of anger. It becomes the only remaining guardrail of dignity. The symbolism of power in silence. In conflicts, the loudest often feel the most insecure. Power does not always shout. Sometimes it stands, listens, and remains calm until it must act. Denzel's silence before walking speaks volumes. He didn't need to escalate in volume or insult. He merely declared the conversation over. By doing so, he implicitly said, "I will not let this be defined by your terms. You may ask, but you may not demand. My boundaries are not negotiable." In a world where public figures are often expected to absorb insults, slanders, or framed insinuations, this move is radical. It declares that the interview subject is not a punching bag. The table of hosts is not sovereign over every word you speak. This is reminiscent of ancient rhetoric. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in speech, but in refusal to be spoken for. The walk-off was not a defeat. It was a reclaiming. The audience's role, witness versus spectator. One reason this moment resonated so deeply is that millions saw it live, or in clips. It was not behind closed doors. It was a public ritual. The audience became part of the tableau, stunned, confused, waiting. That adds weight. When someone walks off a stage or a show, they force the audience to shift from passive watching to active reflection. Why did that happen? What crossed the line? The hosts could not simply edit it out or pretend it didn't matter. Millions of eyes had already seen, felt, judged. By walking off publicly, Denzel turned a private boundary into a public statement. He made the media accountable to the audience, to us. We became witnesses to how far media interrogation may go, how easily civility may collapse. The moral authority of the refuser. In debates about media, culture, and celebrity, we often talk about sound bites, gotcha questions, or media narratives. But rarely do we talk about moral authority. When someone draws a boundary, they claim authority not because they shout louder, but because they refuse to be complicit in their own diminishment. By refusing to continue, Denzel asserted that integrity matters more than control of the narrative. He refused to play a role in a game rigged against his values. That's power. The refuser gains moral leverage, because once you say, "no more," you force the other side to justify, to adjust, to reckon with their own escalation. And in media, where hosts often set the frame, that reversal is rare and disarming. Culture, media, and the erosion of respect. This moment cannot be divorced from the context. A media environment trending toward confrontation, performance, outrage, and spectacle. Hosts and interviewers increasingly behave less as questioners than as challengers, seeking reactions, viral moments, ideological showdowns. The ethics of journalism often give way to the imperatives of ratings and social media virality. In that context, Denzel's walk-off was not just about a single moment of disrespect. It was a refusal of the direction the media is going. It was resistance to a culture that confuses conflict with truth, posturing with sincerity, pressure with accountability. When interviewers violate personal dignity in the name of hard questions, they betray the trust audiences place in them. To dig deeper, not to exploit, Denzel's refusal signals there is a line that even fame should not cross, and that line is respect for the person behind the public persona. The ripple effect, what it means for others. This moment gives permission to others, not just celebrities, but everyday people. In boardrooms, in workplaces, in interpersonal relationships, we often endure disrespect because walking away feels like giving up. But sometimes walking away is the most powerful move. It also gives a lesson to media professionals that queries can be probing without being predatory, that interrogations can be rigorous without being hostile, that being tough does not require breaking down the person, that respect must remain the foundational ethic. In the public sphere, when figures like Denzel assert boundaries, they shift the Overton window. What is acceptable behavior in media? What counts as decorum? What audiences will tolerate? The walk-off becomes a marker in the evolution of media norms. The price of refusal, and the reward. Walking off a show is not without cost. It invites criticism, that you are unwilling to answer, that you're dramatic, that you're unable to take tough questions. It risks alienating media platforms. It may limit future appearances. But the reward, the preservation of dignity, the refusal to be trapped, the moral statement, can outweigh those costs. The public often respects the one who walks away over the one who shouts, because the one who walks away shows that their value is intrinsic, not contingent on approval. In this moment, Denzel risked much, but by doing so, he reclaimed something no one else can take: the final say over how he is treated. The fallout. When the cameras cut, the audience clapped nervously, and social media began to buzz. It became clear this wasn't just another celebrity spat on a talk show. What happened between Denzel Washington and Sunny Hostin on The View immediately transcended the studio walls. It spilled into living rooms, onto Twitter feeds, into headlines. In the age of instant information, one man's refusal to tolerate disrespect became a cultural flashpoint. But the true story isn't the shouting match, the mic drop moment, or even the walk-off itself. The true story is what happened next. The battle for the narrative. Who gets to define what the moment meant? Who gets to hold moral ground after the lights dim? This is where media power, reputation, and public perception collide. Media's immediate response, framing the story. Whenever a moment like this explodes on live television, the first thing that happens is framing. Talk show hosts, network producers, journalists, and online commentators scramble to decide what the story actually is. Is it about a thin-skinned actor storming off? Is it about a disrespectful host crossing a line? Is it about free speech, political correctness, or ego? Within hours, clips were circulating with headlines that reflected bias. Denzel loses temper on The View. Sunny Hostin gets schooled by Denzel. Chaos on daytime TV as Washington walks out. Notice how each headline shapes perception. One suggests weakness. Another suggests dominance. Another frames it as spectacle. This is the first battlefield. Whoever controls the headline controls the angle. But unlike average guests, Denzel is no ordinary figure. His decades-long reputation as disciplined, principled, and private gave him leverage. For years, he has carefully avoided scandals, always choosing his words with intention. That record matters. When the audience sees someone like him react this way, it raises questions. If he reached a breaking point, maybe the provocation truly was unacceptable. Reputation as armor. In media warfare, reputation is armor. Some celebrities, when confronted, buckle under the weight of their past mistakes. Their walk-offs get mocked. Their refusals are seen as cowardice. But Denzel's brand has always been one of stoic professionalism. He doesn't do tabloid drama. He doesn't trend for the wrong reasons. He trends because of his craft. That reputation insulated him. Instead of being read as weakness, his refusal was interpreted by many as strength. It was the act of a man who has nothing to prove, nothing to gain from engaging in disrespect, and everything to lose by playing along. This is where media often underestimates moral credibility. Sunny Hostin may have had the platform, the table, the audience, the live cameras, but Denzel had something more powerful: decades of cultural respect. In the end, when respect collides with provocation, respect often wins. The audience reaction. Why people took sides. Moments like this expose a deeper truth about the audience. We don't just watch television, we identify with it. Viewers took sides, and in doing so, revealed what they value most. Some sided with Sunny Hostin, praising her for asking the hard questions. They saw Denzel's walk-off as an inability to take criticism, as proof that even legends have fragile egos. To them, refusing to engage looked like weakness. But many more sided with Denzel. Why? Because ordinary people know the sting of being pushed too far. They know the feeling of being cornered by someone who won't let them speak, who insists on framing their words in the worst possible light. For those people, Denzel's move was cathartic. It was the moment they wished they themselves could have. The courage to say, "I'm done," and walk away with dignity intact. That resonance explains why clips of the exchange spread so quickly online. It wasn't just about celebrity gossip. It was about boundaries. It was about a universal human struggle. How do you protect your integrity in a world that constantly tries to strip it away? Talk shows as arenas of control. The View, like many daytime talk shows, thrives on confrontation. Its producers understand that heated arguments equal viral clips, and viral clips equal ratings. The format itself is designed as an arena. Multiple hosts with different personalities, one guest placed in the center, the conversation veering between curiosity and combat. In this format, the guest is often at a disadvantage. They're outnumbered, surrounded, with producers controlling the questions, the timing, even the audience's reactions. But Denzel flipped the script. By walking away, he disrupted the show's rhythm. He denied them the conflict-driven climax they were pushing for. In doing so, he reminded the public that talk shows are not neutral forums. They are stages of control, and refusing to play along is sometimes the only way to reclaim agency. The philosophy of refusal. This moment is bigger than television. It's about the philosophy of refusal. Our culture often praises endurance, the idea that staying in the room, continuing to argue, taking it on the chin, is the mark of strength. But what if the opposite is true? What if strength is knowing when to stop giving your time, energy, and dignity to a space that does not respect them? By refusing to continue, Denzel embodied a principle older than media itself, that walking away can be the ultimate act of power. History is filled with examples. Leaders who left corrupt courts, thinkers who refused to debate tyrants, individuals who chose exile over compromise. Refusal is not weakness, refusal is declaration. It says, "My values are not for sale, my presence is not automatic, and my silence will speak louder than your questions." The media's dilemma. Double standards. This event also reveals a double standard in media. When hosts press celebrities aggressively, it is called good journalism. But when celebrities push back, it is often labeled hostile or unprofessional. Why should media personalities have immunity from the very accountability they demand of their guests? Why should they be allowed to probe endlessly without respecting boundaries? Denzel's act exposed that imbalance. It reminded us that guests are not props. They are human beings. By saying, "I'm done," he forced audiences to consider the ethics of interviewing itself. What is the line between tough questioning and humiliation? At what point does inquiry become exploitation? These questions are uncomfortable for media, which thrives on blurred lines. Legacy over moments. Finally, we must consider the long-term view. For Denzel Washington, this moment will not define his career. His legacy is too large, too enduring, too respected. But for Sunny Hostin and The View, the exchange may linger differently. Talk shows rely on maintaining an illusion of balance, that guests are respected, that dialogue is fair. When a guest as revered as Denzel rejects that premise publicly, it damages the brand. In the end, the question is not who shouted loudest or who won. The question is whose reputation emerged intact. And in this case, the walk-off may ultimately strengthen Denzel's reputation as a man unwilling to compromise his dignity while leaving The View with yet another mark of controversy: the philosophy of dignity. When Denzel Washington said, "I'm done with this show," it was not merely an exit line. It was a philosophy expressed in action. In that instant, he demonstrated something that cannot be rehearsed, faked, or spun: the quiet authority of dignity. This moment, and the way he chose to handle it, opens a larger discussion. What does dignity look like in the modern world? Why is silence often more powerful than speech? And why does walking away sometimes carry more weight than staying and arguing? Let us dive into the deeper lessons, the philosophy of dignity that this moment reveals. Dignity as non-negotiable currency. Dignity is not granted by others. It is maintained by the self. Too often, people allow their dignity to be negotiated away, piece by piece, in the pursuit of approval, opportunities, or acceptance. But true dignity is uncompromising. Denzel's refusal to continue the conversation after it crossed a line shows this clearly. He did not shout, insult, or descend into chaos. He simply drew a line. This far, no further. In philosophy, dignity is considered the highest form of human worth, higher even than wealth or power. Kant once wrote that dignity is that which is beyond price. When you refuse to trade dignity for attention or compliance, you demonstrate to the world that your value cannot be diminished. That's what Denzel did. He refused to exchange dignity for airtime, and in doing so, he reminded millions of people that self-respect is the most powerful currency. Masculinity redefined, strength without rage. Much of society today misunderstands masculinity. Strength is often confused with aggression. Authority is mistaken for control. But what Denzel displayed was the older, deeper definition of masculinity: restraint. He could have raised his voice. He could have matched hostility with hostility. Instead, he chose calm clarity. He chose to walk away rather than escalate. This is the kind of masculinity that resonates across cultures and eras. True power is not in overpowering others, but in refusing to be drawn into battles that diminish you. Silence can be louder than shouting. Restraint can be stronger than reaction. In a time when public figures often perform anger for applause, Denzel modeled something rare: strength without rage. It is a reminder that real men and real leaders don't waste their energy proving themselves in hostile arenas. They know who they are, and they don't need to argue about it. Silence as a weapon of power. The walk-off is not about absence. It is about presence. It is about using silence as a weapon. In rhetoric, silence has always been a tactic. Ancient philosophers understood that sometimes refusing to respond speaks louder than the sharpest argument. To stay silent is to deny your opponent fuel. To walk away is to refuse to be caged by their framing. Denzel's silence after his declaration created tension. It forced everyone in the room, hosts, producers, audience, to grapple with the weight of his refusal. He left them with no spectacle, no escalation to control. Instead, he left them with a void they could not fill. In power dynamics, silence often unnerves those who thrive on control. Hostile questioning relies on reaction. Without it, the structure collapses. That is the brilliance of silence. It exposes the other side's dependence on your engagement. By choosing silence, Denzel revealed the asymmetry of the encounter. He did not need the show. The show needed him. And when he left, he took the authority with him. The Stoic parallel: control what you can, reject what you can't. Denzel's reaction also echoes Stoic philosophy. The Stoics taught that true freedom lies in controlling one's own responses, not external circumstances. You cannot control what others say or do, but you can always control how you respond. In this case, the external situation, a confrontational host, a hostile frame, was outside Denzel's control. What was in his control was his dignity, his time, his choice to remain or to leave. By walking off, he embodied the Stoic principle: withdraw from what is corrosive, stay true to what is essential. This choice was not about weakness, it was about alignment. He aligned his actions with his principles. And when principles guide you, no external force can shake you. Boundaries, the architecture of respect. Boundaries are the invisible walls that protect our integrity. Without them, we become vulnerable to manipulation, disrespect, and exploitation. The moment Sunny Hostin pressed too far, Denzel drew his boundary, not with aggression, but with clarity. Boundaries are powerful because they communicate values. They say, "I will not let you define me. I will not allow you to drag me into your arena. I know my worth, and I will not compromise it." For audiences watching, this was more than a celebrity moment. It was a lesson in boundaries. Too often, we allow others, bosses, colleagues, family, even strangers, to push us past our limits. We stay silent, we endure, we rationalize, but in the long run, this erodes our self-respect. Denzel's walk-off is a reminder. You are always free to leave the table where respect is no longer served. And in doing so, you teach others how to treat you. The cultural hunger for integrity. Why did this moment resonate so widely? Because culture is starving for integrity. We live in an era where public life often feels staged, where people compromise values for likes, where celebrities perform outrage for relevance. Against that backdrop, Denzel's simple refusal feels radical. Audiences crave figures who stand for something beyond themselves. Integrity is magnetic because it is rare. When a man with decades of reputation demonstrates that he will not sell his dignity for attention, it stands out like a beacon. The reaction online, memes, admiration, debate was less about gossip and more about longing. Longing for authenticity, longing for leaders who embody values, longing for public figures who remind us that dignity still matters. The deeper lesson, when to exit. Perhaps the most important philosophical lesson is about timing, knowing when to exit. Life is full of arenas, jobs, relationships, conversations, opportunities that slowly erode our dignity. Most people stay too long, afraid of what walking away will cost them. They fear the judgment of others, the loss of opportunity, the discomfort of change. But walking away is often the turning point of self-respect. It is the moment you choose peace over conflict, integrity over compromise, self-worth over approval. Denzel modeled this for millions. The courage to say, "This is not worth it." Exiting is not defeat. It is strategy. It is the ability to look beyond the moment and protect the long game. Your reputation, your peace, your principles. The philosophy of dignity is simple but not easy. It demands boundaries, restraint, and courage. It demands the willingness to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. And in that live television moment, Denzel Washington showed what it looks like in action. By refusing to play the game, he reminded us that respect is not earned in endless arguments. It is preserved in silence. By walking away, he reminded us that power is not in control of others. It is in control of yourself. By holding his ground, he reminded us that masculinity, dignity, and integrity are not outdated ideals, but eternal ones. In a noisy world, silence is power. In a corrupt culture, dignity is rebellion. And in a media landscape obsessed with spectacle, sometimes the most radical act is to simply stand up, say, "I'm done," and leave with your head high. Because true greatness is not about being seen. It's about being remembered for the values you refuse to compromise.